Well, good evening, folks, and welcome back to another episode of When It Was Real. This show focuses on the glory days of the WWF in the 1970s, the perfect time to grow up as a professional wrestling fan. Now, I'm just a timekeeper at the bell like Mike Mittman, but the next guy, the guy over there, he's the star that's being introduced by Joe McHugh. He's the one and only Nikita Brezhnikov. Nikita, how are you, my friend?
Good evening.
That sounded like Alfred Hitchcock almost.
You got it.
Yeah.
Very good, Benny.
All right. If you would do the honors of introducing our very special guest.
Well, yes, we are honored and privileged tonight to have the granddaughter of the one and only Ivan Koloff. Miss Melodie, thank you for being on our show. And I got to tell you, it was probably, if you did a search on the computer of hot wrestling topics, your grandfather being inducted to the Hall of Fame has been probably at the top 5 for the last 20 years. So you were there. We want to hear all about it. Thank you for being part of the show tonight. And I'm sure there's going to be fans galore with questions.
Absolutely. And Melodie, for the record, how do you pronounce your last name? Because I don't like to mispronounce anybody's name. Is it Perras?
Yep, Paris like the city.
Okay, perfect. All right, we got that out of the way. So, folks, a quick word from the sponsor to pay the bills, and we're going to chat with our very special guest about her very special grandfather in 1 minute. This is Benny Scala, the one and only player. Folks, I am beyond excited to be co-hosting this new show, When It Was Real. And I am just as excited to be announcing our new sponsor, the Free Spirited Company. Free Spirited is a phenomenal old-school clothing company that specializes in short and long-sleeve T-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, graphic tees, heck, even yoga pants. These T-shirts are, to quote Rocky's manager Mickey Goldmill, a work of art. Yours truly will be rocking the Free Spirited merch on each and every episode of When It Was Real. Not only are these shirts eye-catching, but they are very comfortable as well. Like what you see? Please go to shopfreespirited.com and use our special code MP20 to receive a 20% discount on all purchases. Again, that is shopfreespirited.com, and that code is MP20. As the poet laureate of the Monte The Pharaoh YouTube channel, I will leave you with this. If you like what you see, go buy a tee. Heck, maybe 2 or 3. When your friends tell you, hey, you look like the bomb, send them over to shopfreespirited.com. All right, I got to prove I'm a man of my word. Here we go. Rocking the merch.
Now, do they have pants to match? Because I'm looking to get a new suit, Benny.
That would be great, right?
I mean, that'd be it.
Get the whole zoot suit look. You got to get the watch fob, and yeah, sure.
I'll be channeling the Grand Wizard, yes.
Absolutely. So before we start our show, we have to toast the great Ivan Koloff. I want to thank him for everything that he did for us fans. Salute.
Just love you.
Don't have one, but salute.
But you are there in spirit, Melodie. So there you go. I'll take a drink for you then. There you go.
There you go. That'll work.
Now it's official.
So,
Melodie, right. This is a little bit different tonight, though. Because
yeah. Melodie, it's kind of hard to tell, but Nikita and I we're a little bit older than you, just a little bit. But, we grew up, and we talked about this offline. We grew up during a time when being a fan of professional wrestling wasn't socially acceptable, maybe a good way to say it. But, I've told the story many times. Being in junior high, and if you liked wrestling, you were a freak, literally, and you were ostracized. So you found like those 2 or 3 other kids, and you'd go in the cafeteria, get your own table, start talking about wrestling on Saturday night, and then when somebody walked over to the table, you had to immediately change the subject to some girl we liked or the school lunch. But the good thing about it now is that you can proudly be a fan and publicly be a fan. So I have to know, what was it like growing up as the granddaughter of literally one of the most iconic figures in the history of professional wrestling, Ivan Koloff? What did you hear from your friends and from your classmates?
So a lot different than changing the topic, because everybody wanted to talk about it. Like at pizza bingos, people would line up and it kind of was centered around my grandfather at that point. So he didn't go to too many things because he knew he would take away attention. But my friends growing up definitely knew I was into wrestling, and it was kind of respected.
Beautiful. Now,
Okay.
we have to talk about one thing, Benny. What you said, he didn't want to take away from whatever event he was at because he knew instantaneous. There's Ivan Koloff, stop the
Yeah.
presses. But then he became a minister and was marrying people, correct?
Yeah.
Now, you had to be available or at least present for a lot of these services, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, tons of them. One I remember the most was at an aquarium, and I just went back to it for the first time a couple of days ago. And there was a wedding at the aquarium that he officiated, and he took me right along. I just thought it was a trip to the aquarium, but it was actually a wedding ceremony.
Yes.
You
Now,
know,
I know he was popular too, right? There was many requests.
A lot.
Well, I got to tell a quick story, Benny.
oh yeah, go
He,
right ahead.
he got Nikolai into it.
Really?
Nikolai he married my son. I believe that's the only ceremony he performed. Unfortunately, after that, that was April. Nikolai passed away July 29th. His son was married April 14th. So I think that's the only one because when my son said, it was a longer story I won't get into, but he said, Dad, Nikolai is going to do it. I said, do what? He's going to do the ceremony. I said, don't blame me. Okay, I'll be there to help. And it was beautiful. But Nikolai said, yeah, Ivan Koloff told me about it. He said, oh, people love it. Why not? I said, hey, you could make like half a ring because Nikolai had a pretty good piece of property. People pour in, and it
Oh,
probably
yeah.
like for Uncle Ivan, it, you know?
Yeah. People all the time. I've got some of his books and thousands and thousands of requests that he printed out and was going through even up until he died.
Wow. Beautiful.
So wait, Nikita, you said Nikolai also became a minister?
Yes. Yes,
Oh
he
my
did.
God, I didn't know that.
He had the legal power to marry, and he performed the ceremony for my son. Yeah.
You know, if I had known that, I probably would have found somebody who got married just so like one of the either Ivan or Nikolai could have married me. That was, I mean,
Exactly.
how great would that have been?
Yes.
My grandpa actually married my mom and dad, and we've got
Really?
pictures. It was beautiful.
Nice.
Wow.
Well, I
That
know
is,
he turned his life over to the Lord, and
Yeah.
he was very much dedicated to that. Let's march, that was
Yeah.
his new thing. Yeah, I'm a wrestler, but I'm a warrior for Christ, and it's like, good man.
He was a great man.
what some
Exactly.
Melody, what kind of things did you do with him? Because you mentioned to me that, when we were chatting before, like in the weeks before the show, that you spent a lot of time with him. What kind of stuff did you like to do with him?
See, I probably spent 6 days out of every week with him. He was definitely my best friend. I'm the oldest granddaughter. And so my favorite thing that we used to do was probably 2 or 3 times a week. He had this extra bedroom he turned into a gym. And so me being the older one, I'm kind of like the oldest son. And so we would work out together probably 2, 3 times a week. And that was our bonding time. And it was just the greatest thing ever.
Now, when you say workout, are you talking about like weights or?
Yeah, like weightlifting, the pull down bars, everything you could think of.
So he was still doing that then?
Oh yeah. Up until he
Wow.
physically couldn't lift something, he was working out.
Did he teach you any wrestling maneuvers?
Yeah, my little sister probably didn't like it, but he would coach us on wrestling each other when we were younger kids.
Hey man, at least like you got a great coach. There's less of a chance of you getting hurt.
Yeah, he would switch back and forth on who he helped though, so
That was, I mean, he's got to be impartial, right? It's like the
yeah.
referee.
Yep, it was so fun growing up though.
It's good to have a girl or a woman be able to defend themselves, and who
Yeah.
better teacher? Because what would people charge for that? Even
Oh
just the
yeah.
workout aspect. It's like, hey, here, I got the pro of pros, please. Because for years, Ivan was not just known for his power and his bulk, but his stamina. But he could
Yeah.
go, and then he dropped weight around like in the 80s. He went from being almost 300. He was right around 260, 265. And Pat Patterson used to say it the best. He said, I call him La Machine. He just
Yeah.
goes and goes.
I remember him in the Mid Atlantic, in like the late '80s. So he was probably what, like 44, 45, and you'd watch a TV match, and he never slowed down. He literally, like you said, he was a machine. He just, he was a buzzsaw, never stopped. And he's wrestling guys probably, maybe half his age, but he was in better shape than they were.
Yeah, I used to watch a lot of wrestling videos with him too. That's the other thing we used to do. And it's kind of funny because being the grandkid, instead of him telling me about the moves he did, he would commentate. He kind of switched sides. So we're watching these wrestling VHS tapes together, and he would commentate. And that was something I was like, how'd you get up that fast? And he's like, I don't know. I'm just running around like a little bug. And he would be pinging across the screen. But that used to be so fun to watch those with him too.
So his own matches or
Yeah.
other people's? Okay.
Yep, I loved to watch his old VHS tapes. He had a whole crate in his room, and so I'd go pick out one and we'd watch it.
How far back did he go with that? Like, how did he go back to the old WWF against like Bob Backlund, Bruno? I mean,
oh yeah, there was some I believe even as like Red McNulty. He had a couple that were videoed for VHS that I watched.
That's what, Nikita. That's what, mid to late '60s in Canada, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were really old.
Beautiful.
In fact, Davey O'Hannon, because when I was doing a story about your grandfather Pro Wrestling Stories, Davey O'Hannon's a great guy. Hopefully he'll be on our show soon. I've asked him for help on stories about Dominic DeNucci and Baron Cicluna, but also when I was writing about your grandfather, and he called him Red, and that's what the guys in the WWF, they called him Red, and he didn't have any hair, but they called him Red. And Davey made a point of saying that Ivan or Red bought meaning Davey's dad, a gift. They stopped at a gift store somewhere in New Jersey, and Davey went in. Ivan went in, and he came back and said, "This is for your father," because I guess Davey never charged him for transportation for trans, and Ivan appreciated it so much that he bought Davey O'Hannon's dad, who was a big fan of Ivan, a gift. And he said that's the kind of guy that Red was. So he had like all the love and respect in the world for the guy.
That's awesome.
And just hearing things like that. This is why I love wrestling. It's one thing, you're a fan of what happened in the ring, but hearing those stories, it's way better than that.
Yeah.
And this is what we're doing differently for the fans out there tonight. Ivan Koloff's granddaughter, we're hearing about what goes on within the family. Benny and I could probably sit here and rattle off a 2-hour show on your grandfather. No problem. We followed him that much, know that much about him. I've actually worked with him. I was lucky in my life. But this is coming from you, the family. How about the ceremony that the WWE, when they finally, after everybody, I'm not going to say petition because they didn't listen to that probably, but they finally did it. Tell us about the experience, Melodie.
It was quite an experience. It was in Las Vegas, which is completely across the country from where we're from. And so it was a little out of our element, but it was a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. That video was really well done, and it really meant a lot to my family.
How did they treat you? Were they happy to have you there?
Oh, yeah. We got chauffeured around everywhere, which was very strange for people from North Carolina. And my family actually wasn't able to attend WrestleMania. They weren't feeling too well, but I actually got to go, and it was beautiful. Wow, nothing like anything I've ever done before.
I'm so happy because people make fun of me because I've been on a soapbox for years on all my podcasts. When is Ivan Koloff going to get inducted? When, and I sounded like a broken record, but I'm so happy that it finally happened. But I really wish that it could have happened, when he was around to really, to accept the honor. Because, let's be honest, in the history of professional wrestling, Nikita, to me, it's the most significant victory, at least in my opinion. Him beating Bruno on January 18th, 1971. What's more historic than that?
Now, Melodie, for you at the time, Bruno, but of course, that was before your time when this happened. He was undefeated 7 years straight as the champion. And it was like people say a pin drop. There was no riot. It was just like gasp. And it did turn the world. It's like, wow, Ivan Koloff beat Bruno. They had a backstory to it, but nevertheless, it was clean. It was no angles or gimmicks or anything. Clean 1, 2, 3 in the ring. And before that, Bruno wrestled your grandfather so many times in
Oh yeah.
Pittsburgh, even the Garden. And then after that, when Bruno bought the Pittsburgh territory, because we had a fellow on not long ago, and he said they had to change things up because it was always Bruno against Ivan Koloff or George Steele or some, and it's like, not that it was bad, but
Yeah.
he knew he could work with him, because when they brought him back, Bruno never had a rematch with your grandfather, because Bruno he needed a break. He was physically tired. So in 1975, though, second run for Bruno, then your grandfather comes back and they have a 3-match series. The very first cage match in Madison Square Garden involved your grandfather and Bruno. Another part of history for him.
Yeah.
But really, when you think about it, though, I mean, Bruno was champion, 7 years and 8 months? They could have chosen anybody to be the man that ended Bruno's reign, but yet they chose Ivan Koloff, and I have to believe they chose him for a reason, because he could be trusted and because he was so good at what
To
he
my
did.
knowledge, I believe it was actually Bruno that chose him.
I believe you're right, and it was dangerous because we were still in a Cold War with Russia.
Yeah, yeah.
It could have gotten ugly very quickly, except for, again, people were just like, they were stunned. And then there was no return match. And then next month, Pedro beats him. And it's kind of like, okay, they got out of the ring. It was fine. Everything worked out. But I watched personally your grandfather back in 1983 leave the Baltimore Civic Center. And in those days, the garage was attached to the building. And they had this, it was like a metal door that would go, it would be on these rollers, and fans would duck. They say, who is it? Who is it? And they say, it's Koloff. And so everybody got their ammunition ready. And you could hear him gunning the engine as the thing's going up. Soon as it cleared the roof, he didn't wait to get all the way up. As soon as it was clear, he took off. He's getting pelted with stones. He went the wrong way on a main artery, but he had to get out of there because the crazy fans were after him.
Yeah. He told me a story of fans trying to flip his car, I think somewhere in Pennsylvania. And he said that was terrifying.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I want to go back to that night, though, January 18th. I mean, Nikita, how many people were in the Garden? I'm sure it was a sellout. There's like 20-something thousand, maybe.
Yeah, it was full.
Right.
Absolutely.
And he's going in, meaning Ivan, he's going into that match knowing that he's going over. He's going to pin Bruno in the middle of the ring. And let's face it, Bruno wasn't just loved. I mean, it's not like Seth Rollins is loved. Bruno was, can I use the word worshipped? Is that too far of a stretch?
No, absolutely correct.
Pretty accurate.
I mean, I heard people had the pictures. Was it Jesus Christ, the Pope, and Bruno on their fireplace? I mean, that is the place that Bruno had in these people's minds and hearts.
Well, if you look back at some of the matches that were on HBO in the 70s, he would be given dozens of roses. They would hand them to the attendants, and then they would hand them up to the ring. I mean, yeah, it's like he was adored without a doubt.
But if I'm him, and going into this match, I would be scared to death, because you got 22,000 Bruno worshipers, and you don't know how they're going to react. Nobody knew, because Bruno never lost.
Well, as the story goes, Melodie, Bruno got the broken neck, right?
Yeah.
By Stan Hansen. They say they think maybe Hansen was a little bit nervous. That was one of his first main events in the Garden. They think maybe that's what happened. He just was a little bit green for that, and it happens. And I'm sure your grandfather, because he had the hands, but he also, you could see the years in the ring in those hands, without a doubt. He paid the price.
Oh yeah.
I hate when people use the F word, F-A-K-E. It's like, no, it is not that, not at all. It may be a lot of things, and it has to be, because it's got to be controlled somewhat. But especially in his day, in the 70s and the 60s, they were trying to help each other as well. because they had to work 6 days a week, maybe 7,
Yeah.
sometimes twice on Sunday. And it's like, because, they would go up to Toronto and things
Mhm.
like that. You needed to make the money you put the groceries on the table. That was it.
Yeah. I think it used to bother me more than him when people called it fake because I got to see him and all his like his ankles were the size of tree knots. He wobbled around and he was in a lot of pain all the time. That's how I remember him. And he was like hunched over. And so people saying it was fake used to upset me because I'm like, this man's really like hurt and injured from this. It's not fake. But he would
Mhm.
have to calm my nerves because I would get too worked up over it.
Well,
Very good. Good for
speaking
you.
of Davey O'Hannon, I mean, next time I talk to Davey, I'm going to present him with a fake award from the American Medical Association because, I mean, the guy has literally kept surgeons in business for years. I don't know how many he's gotten. I mean, how many did Bruno get? Bruno had at least 15. Davey's had at least that many. I mean, you don't get that working as an accountant for Touche Ross.
No, and to come back in 2 months to perform at Shea Stadium after you're laying there with traction with that gimmick tied to his neck, and it's like, you want to do what? You want to promote me to be an Imagine? It's like, okay, it's like incredible. But your grandfather did a series that I was lucky enough to be with him in 1999, and your grandmother was there. It was a tour of Virginia we were doing, and it started on a Friday night. He was teaming with Nikolai against 2 guys. The next day, he came to me. He says, I can't. You team with Nikolai. I'll manage you guys. It's been too long. It's like, but Nikolai come through. He said, I have good idea. We go out and say, any Russian can be 2 stupid American. We flip a coin. So then your grandfather and I were on the outside, and Nikolai was in there in a handicap match. And it was great because we did more on the outside than was inside the ring.
Yeah.
But he didn't have to take any bumps, so it was beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, your grandmother was there, and I know she loved him so dearly because she
Oh, yeah.
said she waited for him for so many years, and
Yeah, their
then
love
she was
story
just
was something.
well, that's true love when you
Yeah.
know that, hey, I'm here every day. Because I tell you, it's a sad story. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but a fellow, he does his own wrestling. His wife came down with Alzheimer's, and he still visits her daily. And he said, some days she'll know me, and some days she doesn't, but I know her. And it's like, yeah, that's love, man. It's not running
Yeah.
around to Hawaii and goofy stuff like that. That's love.
They say that love, I mean, people usually equate love from the heart, but love is an action word. You can say I love you, to anybody. You can meet somebody at a bar and say, I think I love you. But true love is in, going to somebody, to visiting your wife at a senior home when she has Alzheimer's and she doesn't even know who you are. That's, in my book, that's really love.
Sure. Well, Melody, I guess you had to have been like a target over the years because of your association. Guys probably say, I want to get close to her because that's Ivan Koloff's granddaughter.
You'd be surprised it actually had the opposite effect. They were like, oh
Really?
man, you don't want to mess with her. And I was very loner kid, and people just really didn't mess with me growing up. And that's kind of the way I liked it too.
Good. Very good. At least you were safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I had Bobby Heenan's daughter on Dan and Benny, and she same thing. Like guys would be very careful when they came to her house, what they said and how they behaved. They were on their like ultra best behavior because even Bobby Heenan, like he was a no nonsense guy, and he was very protective of his daughter.
Very good. Melody, I guess you're good friends with Jimmy Valiant, right?
Yes.
I mean, those two, just wonderful souls, Ivan and Jimmy. I mean, from hated by us, the fans back then, to turn around to just give so much, just a giving of themselves. And
Yeah.
of course, they were nearby, pretty close and neighbors, right?
Yeah, I saw him a lot growing up.
Very good. Do you still
Well,
see him?
I haven't seen him lately, but I believe I'm supposed to see him coming up in a few months.
have you
Beautiful.
been to his school, Melody, in
That's
Virginia?
actually what we're trying to go do in a couple of months, I believe.
That I tell people, like, it's 50 miles east of parts unknown. It is literally in God's country. If you can find it, because I was living there for about 4 or 5 months, and I think I'm actually still the commissioner of BWC, the kayfabe commissioner. But once you get there, you have, I mean, the camp is from 12 to 4 on Sundays, but you can get there early, and you'll find Jimmy outside at 10:30 sweeping up, and I mean, he'll talk to anybody. He's really a great guy. But I mean, you have no phone service for probably like for the whole time. The minute you get there, I don't care what company you have no phone. And once you drive away from the camp about 5 or 10 minutes, then you're back in civilization again. But it's really a special place. It really is. It's you watch, and the nice thing is all these aspiring wrestlers are helping each other. And Jimmy's there kind of offering, some guidance and everything, but it's a great place. It really is. You just got to find it.
To go.
That's great. Now, in the wrestling circle, families, if they got together, because they were lucky to see the people that were in their own family, but it's a special bond, isn't it?
It is. It's really nice getting to meet other wrestlers' families. Actually, at the Hall of Fame, I got to meet the family of the Funks, and they are so sweet and such great people. I love talking to them.
Did you meet Marty, Melodie? Marty Funk?
I did not.
Okay.
There's a lot of them, but I got to talk to all of them in circulation.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that is Kamala's family. I got to meet them, and I still stay in touch with them. They're great people, so sweet.
It's so funny, even hearing Ivan Koloff and Jimmy Valiant, like the wars they had when Ivan was part of Paul Jones' army, wasn't he, in Mid-Atlantic, Nikita? I believe he was.
I don't know anything except WWE.
Because they had many a match in Mid-Atlantic, and they for years they were huge rivals. And to think that they were like such beloved friends in real life, I mean, I never get tired of hearing stuff like that.
Well, I'm sure you could see your grandfather's scars without a doubt. And I mean, it's like back to that fake when we could slap them when they say it. It's like, that's real blood. And you still have people would say, now that's Hollywood blood capsule. It's like, are you crazy? How could it be? And, I've done both ends. I've been in Hollywood doing movies. It's like, okay, you have an opportunity. But you know who Lou Albano is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we watched him one night in Baltimore. Bruno was just destroying him. And we went to the ring, intermission followed, and it was just like a trail. I don't want to be disgusting to you, but you're in wrestling, so you're tough. You could take it. All the way back to the dressing room, and it's like, that's not fake. Look at that. My God, it's unbelievable. And Lou was crazy that way. And he managed your grandfather without a doubt. They were close at one point, I know. I don't know through the years, because Lou was very, it was a deep, devoted Christian. He really was. But then he got tied in with that. What's that?
That's hard to believe, but I guess anything's possible.
No, Lou was definitely devout Christian. Yeah, he had his crucifix and he would talk about Jesus all the time. But he got involved with the Super Mario Brothers deal. So he was busy a lot with that. And because he used to say to Nikolai and I made more money with this than I made in all the years of wrestling. And it's easy. Just being the goofy Luigi or whoever it was, like a lifelike cartoon character. So it's like, good for you, Lou. That's great.
Wow. Melodie, when he chatted with you about wrestling, because I'm sure you had many a chat about his career. I'm gonna go out on a limb, never having met him, but I'm sure he was very humble and very modest. But what did he talk about as far as his career? What did he enjoy the most, and what did he enjoy the least?
I think the most cliche answer, but the fans. He all the time would have stories about fans, good and bad, but he liked to make me laugh a whole lot. And so all his stories were just crazy stories that you can't even believe happened. Like someone throwing an ice skate at him or trying to flip his car, or so many stories about the fans. But when they came to the table, like I mentioned before, he'd always take time. And that was just his favorite part. He loved seeing the fans, interacting with them, egging them on at indie shows. He'd be in the corner of the show at indie shows, booing the guy or kind of egging some stuff on. And he loved the fans. That was his favorite part of wrestling. As far as the least favorite part, I don't think he had one. That man loved the business through and through. It was his life.
He couldn't have liked to travel that much, but I guess he did it because he had to.
I honestly think deep down he really did love to travel. He
Really?
was one to always just get up and go. Especially, I think once me and my sister kind of grew up, he could take us with him. I think he was just all for it, hopping on a plane, a train, bus, car, whatever he could, and going and making money for our family.
But you said, before we started that he was always like, he always took the time
Hmm.
to interact with the fans. And it's so nice to hear that the man got it, that, these fans are the people that paid the money to buy the tickets or the merchandise. Well, not so much merchandise. It's a shame because he would have been a millionaire probably if they had merch back in his day.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Just think, Melody, how many autographs you saw him sign and just, hi, how you doing? Thanks for stopping by.
Hmm.
Compared to anybody today, if you go to an autograph signing, I don't know, Benny, what's it cost to get in the door?
Well, I mean, at
100?
WrestleMania that week, they advertised like meet and greets, and you had like Braun Breaker and a couple of that. They were $499 to have. I don't know how. I mean, what did you get? 5 minutes maybe? They chatted with you and took a picture, maybe signed an autograph. Paying
Keep you moving,
$500. I mean, back in my day, I at the Allen Garden in West Hempstead, I walked up with a program, handed it to Edouard Carpentier, and the guy signed it for me. He didn't say, "Oh, that'll be $10, kid. Let me get my credit card machine out."
Yeah.
That's what they did. They appreciated the fans. So it's great it's great to know that he got it and he really appreciated the fans.
And the NFL and Major League Baseball are worse. They're like 10 times that amount to go to an autograph signing. And it's like, well, what about the kids? What about the fans
Yeah.
that look up to you? Because, I don't know, what are wrestling tickets, Benny? Geez, what was WrestleMania? All right, Melody, you were lucky to be there. Does anybody know what they charge the fans to get in? I mean, good seats too now, like if you were at ringside.
Me and my sister actually looked at it while we were there, but not at WrestleMania, but we were looking at Ticketmaster, and I think it was like $400 or $500 for like not even really good seats. It was insane.
Well,
There you
when it was in Tampa 3 or 4 years ago, I thought, I'm doing a podcast. I should be a responsible journalist, and I'm going to go to WrestleMania. And then I looked at Raymond James Stadium, like the nosebleed section, where everybody looks like ants, and that was like $486 for one night. I'm thinking, I'm not doing that. That's crazy. That's too much money. To me, like if John Lennon rose from the grave and reunited with George and Paul and Ringo, I'll pay for that, like for the Beatles, but I'm not paying to see wrestling. I mean, as much as I love wrestling, it's too much money. I mean, wrestling was always a blue collar sport, where the average dad can take his kids and his family to the wrestling matches without going broken. I mean, I literally think if you're living in New Jersey, say for example, for like family of four, plane tickets, car rental, hotel, meals, the tickets to WrestleMania, you got to be looking at a minimum $5,000. That's a lot of
At
money.
least.
I don't know how to do it.
I don't know how
And-
they do it either. I mean,
You got to eat while you're there. You got to feed everybody, drink something, and I mean just soda.
I'm sure
things like that.
a lot of credit cards are being maxed out.
Sure. Well, how do you say no to the kids? It's like we want to go to wrestling. And in my day, a ringside seat was $4, and they never changed for a
I
long time.
literally think my dad, my first show, April 26, 1968, Island Garden, Bruno versus Toru Tanaka. I think he paid $6 for our 2 seats, and they were good seats. We weren't that far away. And it's become something. That's the. I mean, for all the mainstream attention that wrestling gets, which is good because again, like I said, we can be proud to be wrestling fans now. People aren't going to make fun of us. But that's the bad side is that, you can't just, it becomes a budget line item. I'm a finance guy from way back. Now, you want to take your family to an event like WrestleMania. I mean, you got to be saving a couple of years in advance for that.
Now, Melody, when you watched your grandfather suffer over the years, especially when he got in the later years, who paid his medical bills?
Oh, everything was out of his pocket. There was no WWE fund or anything. It was just out of pocket, and a lot of it went under the radar. He toughed it out. He took his medicine, and he went on about life. And he was very cautious about that, even still.
Yeah, and that's the other thing people don't realize. Everybody thinks, like these guys back in the 70s, they were really raking it in. But Ivan Koloff was really Ivan Koloff Incorporated, because Ivan had to make sure that he had money set aside for when he was older and he couldn't wrestle anymore, because nobody was going to pay him. So he had to kind of be wise enough to set aside that money and make sure he had insurance. So that, or he had the money to pay the bills out of his pocket. But it wasn't. I mean, yeah, he got to wrestle in front of 20,000 people, but the reality is, when you get older, you got those bills to pay. Yeah. Because we all, we all get older, and we, like Jim Ross said, Father Time is undefeated. You get old; it's just a part of life. And I mean, it's good that he had the wherewithal, but yeah, I mean, he sounds like a wise man, and he knew that at some point he wasn't going to be able to wrestle anymore, and the money wasn't going to be coming in anymore. And unfortunately, a lot of wrestlers, we see all these GoFundMe's now, because not everybody was as wise as your grandfather.
Yeah, we are very fortunate that he was frugal with money, and as a kid, you don't understand that, but looking back, he was always very careful with his money, very careful where it was spent. And looking back, that's why, because you have to save it. Not that you don't have it, but you're very frugal with where you place your money, because you're not wrestling anymore. And he still did do indie events and the Bear Witness for Christ. He made a lot of the money from that. And he was always money and business oriented. He had a great business mind, but he was still always really frugal with it, because he didn't want to be in a position where he was struggling.
Nikolai was the same way, wasn't he, Nikita?
They called him cheap. And you know what? You can call me cheap too, because when we would go to different things where they would have casinos, like Heroes of Wrestling and things like that, Nikolai said, look at the goofs. Oh, they come here, and all the money they spend, they give it right back. And him and I would go to the room, eat the hot dogs, and that would be it. It's like, it doesn't make sense that you would do this and put your body through all of that and to just throw it out the door. It is crazy.
I think that's a big work ethic thing that my grandfather taught me, was when you work for something and you work hard for it, you're not going to spend your money as freely as if it was just given to you. And so, especially with a lot of the wrestlers that are getting older that I see, they put their body on the line and they worked for that money very hard. And so they're going to spend it how they need to. And that's something that my siblings and I take with us still, and we're very thankful for.
That's really good. Lanny Pop always said it was like a bucket, right? It wasn't really how much money went into the bucket; it was how much money stayed in the bucket.
Yeah.
If the bucket has a hole in the bottom, like you're going crazy and spending it on drugs and women and things like that. I mean, yeah, it's coming in, but at the end of the night or the end of the whatever, you have nothing. Whereas if you're wise, like Ivan and Nikolai, that bucket still has money in it.
The day comes, you don't believe it. You're young, Melody. That's nice. Enjoy life. But the day comes. Before you know it, it's like blink, blink. I can't believe it. It's like 40 years. I'm how old? I'm like, wow. And you just enjoy the ride, but yeah, definitely prepare.
Yeah.
Whoever knocks on your door with that roses and all that stuff, like, yeah, watch yourself. Because if you want to say forever, that means till the end of time forever, not just when you decide something's better. Oh, no. Forever.
Yep.
What I love about all of this is that, typically a grandfather, what do? They spoil their grandkids, right? Ivan, he taught you life lessons, and it's very obvious that you listen to him, because I hear it. And I think that's great.
Yeah, he was my best friend through and through. He pretty much raised me. I lived with them probably a good bit of my life, and when he died, it really hit me hard, because I was like, this is like my dad. And he taught me these life lessons. He definitely spoiled us. Don't let me fool you. He definitely spoiled us.
But he taught you values, because
he taught me my values and my ethics, for sure.
And definitely the work ethic too, which is very, very important.
Yeah.
And actually, as now I'm semi-retired, but my last few years, like doing full-time work, I was appalled at how, like, I'm not going to say, but it was mostly younger people. How I had a job where I had to clock in at 8:00, and I'm an older man, and I was there by 7:30 every day, and I'd see these younger people floating in at like 8:15, and I'd say something to one of the managers like, "Aren't they going to get in trouble?" "Oh, it's only 8:50. It's only 15 minutes." Like, what do you mean? It's only 15 minutes. Like they're supposed to be at work at 8 o'clock. That's when you start. And so it's really nice to hear somebody with, a younger person to have those values, because it to me, it truly is a lost art. But, speaking of his faith and his conversion, was the other Nikita, the Russian nightmare, Nikita Koloff, was he instrumental in your grandfather's conversion?
Oh, extremely vital to it. In fact, probably the reason why he was saved at all. Nikita actually invited him to a revival over and over and over on the road. And he was like, come with me, come with me. And Papa was like, man, are you crazy? I'm not going to that thing. And so eventually he was like, fine, I'll go and see what it's all about. And that night that he went, I want to say it was in Charlotte in 1995. And he went and he felt so convicted, and he gave his life to the Lord that day. And he thanked Nikita. He called him Nikki, but he thanked Nikki all the time for that day, over
Now,
and over and over.
What year was that, Melody?
95.
Okay. It's so funny. I mean, it never gets old. I mean, you got one guy from Minnesota, Robbinsdale, right? Nikita,
Yeah.
and then you got Ivan from Montreal, and but everybody in the whole world thinks they're actually two Russian heels. It's great.
Yes.
It's great. It never gets old because they're so good at convincing people how real they are.
I actually have voicemails on my phone that he would leave me where he would pretend to be a Russian. Like, this is Russian here. We have Russian summit meeting right away. And I would get on him like, Papa, the government's going to come after me if they hear this voicemail, because he'd have the full accent on. I would get so mad at him for leaving those. But now I love him.
Nikita did that?
No, my grandfather. He left them on my phone.
Geez.
And I was in middle school, and I would get so ill with him.
So he was full bore like Ivan Koloff.
Yep.
Am I imagining this, or do I remember that at one point, I think the government investigated him? They were a little bit concerned.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't put it past him to do something.
I'd have to do some more research, but I do remember something about that being said. It's like, Ivan Koloff, they were investigating him because everything he was saying, of course, to do the promo and get people into the arena. And then I guess maybe somebody from the FBI or whatever watched it. And it's like, that's beautiful. Man, McMahon Sr. must have been in his glory. It's like, holy, that's great.
I actually just found pictures of them in front of the White House. It was him, I think, and a couple other people. And I believe the security guards took the pictures of them with the Russian flag in front of the White House. And I said, these can never find the light of day, ever. It was so bad.
That's beautiful. Well, people talk, Chief Jay Strongbow, right? One of his great opponents in the back in the 70s.
Oh,
and people are always want to say, well, he was Italian. He was Italian. And it's like, who cares? To us, he wasn't. To us, he was Chief Jay Strongbow. And then they'll always come back, well, Ivan Koloff was Canadian. And it's like, who cares?
It's like a rite of passage for some people to be like, I know the right answer. And I'm like, I do too. It just doesn't really matter, but it's...
I always come back with them and say, do you tell little kids Santa Claus is not real? Because who cares if we believe it and we love it? But I guess like your grandfather taught you, if you don't believe it yourself, you can't make other people believe it.
Yeah.
And that's your difference.
Yep.
I gotta believe that when he was in front of a microphone, he was Ivan Koloff. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Without a doubt, because I got a telephone call from him right after 9/11. He knew I was policeman in Baltimore. And he said, yeah, this is Ivan Koloff. I'm just checking on you folks because I see the tragedy and I want to make sure you're okay. And I know Nikolai works for the county, but Nikolai wasn't police, but he still had a little bit involvement. But it was like, I said, oh my God, I still have the phone call. I recorded. It's like, you believe this? Even though I got to be friends with him, but it's like, Ivan Koloff called me. My God, I can't believe it. But they touched us. They being your grandfather and all from Bruno, the whole like Looney Tunes, everybody marching on the stage, every one of them, from the little guy at the opening to the main events, they all meant something to us.
Yep.
And that's why we talk today, because we love him, we miss him, and we're very honored to have a family member tell us what you saw on the inside.
It's so exciting. I love keeping his memory alive. He always had a saying, out of sight, out of mind. And I never really understood it until he did pass. And then, especially with like the Hall of Fame and stuff, it was like people are forgetting about him. And especially like that moment with Bruno is a big deal. And you've got the people that stuck up for that. And like you, Benny, that are advocating for him to be in the Hall of Fame. But it was like almost like he was forgotten. And that was hard to deal with as a family member. And so I would take any chance I can to talk about him and keep his memory alive.
Well, there are pictures when your grandfather went to Bruno's house and they
Mhm.
were just sitting in the backyard, and it's just like that makes your heart smile. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, that's wonderful. And it's like that's what we need to know years later beyond the fact, not when they're competing, but it's like, you know what? It's okay. It's kind of like, okay, I've been involved with the Hollywood angle as well. They're not people that they portray. That's an actor portraying a character. Do you go and sit in the movie and say, "Well, he's not really shy. He's not really that person." You was just back this. You put your belief aside and you enjoy it. That's
Yeah.
what we did.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, to me, Sylvester Stallone will always be Rocky Balboa. Uh, he just had you so invested in that character that after a while the lines are blurred. Like you didn't care that he really wasn't. To us he really was Rocky Balboa. And you see pictures of Jay Strongbow in his later years, and he dressed like an Indian chief. I mean, right,
Yeah,
right. I mean, he kept the kayfabe, right? George Steele, he didn't say, "Well, my real name is Jim Myers." He was
right.
George Steele. Jay didn't say, "Well, my name is Joe Scarpa." Ivan didn't say, "My name is Oriel Paris." They they lived there. They lived it even after wrestling. I think it's so great.
Did your grandfather copyright his name, Melody? Do you know?
I don't believe he did, not legally. I know like all his passports and stuff said his real name was Orel, but it actually took me forever to convince me that his name was actually Orel. I didn't believe him because when we'd go somewhere, his name was Ivan. But he showed me his driver's license, and I was like, there's no way that's real. But I don't think he ever had it copywritten.
Well, he owned it as far
Yeah.
as like Vince McMahon Sr., like because he already was
Yeah.
Ivan Koloff. Because years later they would develop a character, they owned that name, and it
Yeah.
would be a nightmare for guys to try to and women to get away from that. But
Mhm.
if you walked in back in the 70s and you were over, then fine, that's your property. But just to copyright it to say, that's who I am, so that if the government, even like a license, like a driver's license, like you said, he had his legitimate birth name on it, but it's like I can get a wrestling license. And how about that? I bet you got a bunch of his old wrestling licenses, right?
Oh, I have tons of stuff, tons of plaques and wrestling license and everything you can imagine. I pretty much inherited of his.
See, that's another thing where you can when people want to come up with that it's not legit, it's like you had to have a license. Even a
Yeah.
manager, a referee, everybody
Yep.
had to have a license. And it's like, first time I was like, Nikolai, why we gotta have a license? It's wrestling. And he's like, no, 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 no. No, government's involved in everything. Yeah, and
Oh,
it's
Yeah.
it's the state athletic commission, right? I mean, that
yeah,
was one of the
state
first things
athletic
that
commission.
Joe McHugh said on Saturday morning, and he announced all the officials of the state athletic commission, and to me it lent an air of authenticity. Like, wow, you got the state athletic commission there. That's a pretty big deal,
And you had to be seen by a doctor from the
right?
state athletic commission and pass his physical, or you were going to go out behind the curtain that night. That was it.
Yep.
It's like, wow, this is wild. Then it would be like, it's cool because it does legitimize it. But then it's like, well, wait a minute. That'd be like the police department going down to the playhouse because there's going to be somebody stabbed tonight. It's kind of crazy, but okay, you got to do what you got to do.
If
Not
I
even.
like finding the cards like of who was supposed to be there, but then attached to that usually is the sign-in sheet. And I think it's so funny to see this whole list of all the wrestlers' sign-in sheets, and I've got quite a few of them, and I find them on Facebook all the time, and seeing his little signature is so funny to me.
That's beautiful.
You know what? Real quick before I forget, let me. Here we go. Now,
Right.
is that you, Melody?
That's me. Yep.
All right. Let me. That you too?
That's also me. Yep.
Wow. Look at the. I mean,
Beautiful.
look how proud he is. That you can't fake that.
Yep.
And
Yep. And that's me and my next youngest sister. That's Alyssa.
okay.
Yep. That's also me. We actually were watching wrestling right after this. I remember that day.
That's great.
Yep. That's me too. Yep. And that's me and Alyssa too.
Wow, those are so good.
And there's two more of my siblings that he died when they were 1 and 2 years old. So he never really got to know them. But we don't have really many pictures with him with them. But there is four of us.
Okay, but you are the oldest, correct?
I'm the oldest. Yep.
It just, again, as a fan for now 56 years, 57 years, seeing pictures of somebody like that, the real person, it never gets old. Like, because you always think, it'd be like if I saw Waldo von Erich walking his dog. It's like, wait a minute, like you're a bad guy. You're not supposed to be doing normal things. This is, you're not supposed to be like a devoted, loving grandfather. You can't be. You're Ivan Koloff, but
Now, on the flip side of that, I had the exact opposite phenomenon as a kid. I would see videos and pictures, and I'm like, there's no way that's you. You just brought me ice cream in bed. Like, there's no way you just hit a guy with a chain. And it was hard
right.
for me to wrap my head around.
What did he say about that though? Like, what was this like? What kind of things would he say? Like,
He would giggle. He thought it was so funny. He's like, no, that's me. That's me. And so we just watched it so much, it wasn't really a question. But he would giggle and he would show me scars. And he loved it. He loved seeing me involved with it.
yeah, he bled more than the average wrestler. I mean,
Oh,
he
yeah.
got color a lot.
And
Yep.
again, more history. He's the only, along with Bruno, wrestler involved in a Russian chain match. It took place in Boston. And that's it. That's the only one they ever had. I think it was March 10th of
Mhm.
76. And it ended their feud, but it was like, that's it. Another first for Ivan Koloff. And again with Bruno, boy, they were joined at the hip because they were perfect, two big guys, and they could just deliver it. And it was believable.
The
And
topic of the chain, he never went anywhere without that chain. If we went to the Walmart, he had the chain.
wow.
I don't really know why, but it was just always in the car with us. He never went anywhere without that chain.
Yeah.
That's right. There was a time in the 90s he had like the market cornered on Walmarts. He and your grandma, they were going on a regular basis. Yeah, that's right.
Yep. He signed a lot of autographs at Walmarts and stuff like that.
Yeah. Because the Nikolai said, how we get into that? It's like, well, go to talk to the guys at Walmart. They'll probably do it.
He could business talk anybody, I believe. He could sell something to a homeless man on the side of the street if he wanted to. He was a great business guy.
And people don't realize, yeah, he did, of course he beat Bruno. And even Bruno said he thought like Ivan should have been given a longer reign with the belt, but they didn't do that back then. I mean, they were just transitional champions. But I really think that he could have carried it for like Superstar Graham did, 6 months, 9 months, easily, and have guys chase, have the baby faces chase him. But what people don't realize is that even before he came back to the WWF in '69, that he won the equivalent of the World Championship in Montreal. Before that, I think he beat Mad Dog Vachon, I believe. I could be wrong. But then even I think in '87, when he was, I guess, 44, 45, that he went to Puerto Rico and he won their version, the WWC. So even like at the very end, he's wrestling for what, like 20-something years, and he's in his mid-40s. He's still winning world championships.
Yeah. He was good at what he did, and he loved it. He was always down for anything. If it meant business, he was in.
And he won all the the 6-man tags in Mid-Atlantic. The tag team with was a Crusher Khrushchev, and then Don Kernodle.
Yes,
he never. I mean, it wasn't like like Cicluna, where at the end we kind of went down in the card and he was losing. But
No.
Ivan Koloff was on top to the very end.
And another thing I give your grandfather credit for, he maintained that integrity, because when Vince McMahon went to a circus in 1984 he didn't partake of it at any time. He
Yeah.
kept doing his own thing. He didn't become like some kind of crazy thing that like Vince was doing to some of the other guys. And that meant, you know what? I still hold wrestling forefront. That's it. I don't want to do this crazy stuff. If that's
Yeah.
your thing, you do it, but I'm going to do exit stage left, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Because he was still very active at that time in '84. He
Yeah.
could have definitely done it. I mean, Vince could have made some kind of goofy thing out of him, but it's like, yeah, he didn't want to do it.
And I bet he could have made quite a bit of money, but I think his
Yes.
his integrity was a lot more important than the money.
Yeah. He loved, especially around that time until probably the end, really. He kind of devoted himself more to indies and signing autographs and working with the independent guys. He kind of reminds me of how Ricky Morton is now. He's really centered around indie wrestling, and I love that. Centered around new talent and helping train and inspire people. And that's something my grandfather was very adamant about after he retired. And I loved that so much about him.
Beautiful.
Well, Melody, I believe in angels, and I believe they can see and hear anything. So I really think that he is listening to us right now. How did he want us to remember him?
Ooh. He'd want us to remember him by being someone that was, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. He wanted to inspire people. And I think that was something he loved when he was here. He would hear people tell stories about how he inspired them to do something, chase somebody's dreams, or just be the best version of themselves that they could be. And so I think he'd want us to remember that he did inspire people, regardless of what title he held or how successful he was, Hall of Fame or not. And he'd want to just inspire people and know that he could still do that.
And I think he led by example, just by the way he turned his life around.
Yeah. He'd also, that man, every second he could, he talked about Jesus, and he would want to get people to turn to Christianity, because that's definitely what saved him from all the alcohol and drugs. That was something he really regretted in his life. And he died from liver cancer, and he actually apologized to my grandmother a couple weeks before he passed because he felt so terrible about it. But Jesus definitely is what saved him, and he'd want other people to know that as well.
Amen. And the reason it came, though, was because of pain. People don't realize the constant pain. And when you have pain, there's nothing that's going to help you. I mean, forget about sleep sometimes. Just get through the next minute. And it's like that's how a lot of people get addicted or they'll turn to whatever. But so happy he turned everything around. And we know he's in the Lord's arms, and we'll see him again one day. That's great.
People don't realize even though he was saved, he quit cold turkey, the drugs and alcohol. He was delivered from it, but he still had the pain. It didn't just go away. Now it has, thank God. But the pain didn't go away. So there was sleepless nights. There were doctor's appointments where he was like, no, I don't want that medicine. He took vitamins and tried to do things naturally, which is something I kind of took from that. I didn't like medicine because I never saw him take medicine. And so that pain just didn't go away, but he was a strong man, emotionally, mentally, sexually. I say our legacy. He always used to tell me I'm strong like bull because I used to work out with him and I thought he meant I was just really freaking strong. But now that he's passed, it turns out he meant I was mentally and emotionally strong and really resilient like he was. And that's something that I'll take with me forever.
And he finished great. I mean, he turned his life around. He's like you said, he spent all that time on the indie circuit, and at that point, now you're giving back, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're giving back to the younger wrestlers, and he had the ministry, and he had the time with you guys, the quality time he spent with you guys. So he did all that after he retired. So he did have. I mean, in my mind, it sounds like he had a very good quality of life. I mean, aside from the pain, because I mean that was not going to go away, but he did a lot of good things in his later years.
Yeah, he did. And that's how I remember him. I never really got to see him as big bad Russian guy. He was just my papa. And seeing him give back to the community, him being such a great man, really I think is what shaped me and my sisters and my mom into who we are now.
Amen. Well, Melodie, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and thank you so much for sharing your memories with us. And I hope you know, really, and this comes from like the bottom of my heart, and I know Nikita agrees with me, how much we love and respect your grandfather.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had a blast talking about him. This was so much fun.
Yeah, this is the Ivan Koloff, that we wanted to know about.
Yeah.
Nikita, this gets better by the week. I told you when I was a kid, I used to look forward to Wednesday nights. I could watch Bewitched, and she was what's her name was pretty hot back in the day, Elizabeth Montgomery, and what else? The Courtship of Eddie's Father. That was the other great show. But this is even better, and we have so much more in the works, right?
Absolutely.
Just gets better and better. So I want to thank everybody in the chat room. We had quite a few people. I'm going to Phil DeCesare, J.A. Will, Greg Barry, Isbon Arroyo. Who else? Jason Moaning, Little Patty.
What about Tom Jones?
Yeah, Tom. I think Tom Jones might be performing in Vegas. Right.
There you go.
He'll be 85 next month. Tom Jones. Not our Tom Jones. The Tom
Right.
Jones.
Yeah.
And I think he performed in California like 2 days ago, and then he's doing it, and then he's going to Greece, Hungary, Romania. I mean, the guy is 85 years old. He's doing a world tour, and he doesn't need the money.
Herb Alford, him and the Tijuana Brass, they're out there still performing, and they're in their 80s. It's like
Frankie Valli. I saw Frankie Valli 2 years ago. He was 89, and I mean, he's lost it a little bit. I mean, you know what? He's still out there.
I saw Don McLean. He looked like Tiny Tim. I'm like, that's Tiny Tim, and it's like, no, it's Don McLean. I'm like, oh my, he kind of blew up over the years, but that's cool.
Yeah, but I want to thank everybody. We always have a great chat. We have a lot of great stuff planned, so please hit the like and subscribe buttons so you won't miss any great episodes on the Monte The Pharaoh YouTube channel. There's a lot of great interviews. Mike and Jimmy did one last week with Holly Von Erich, the daughter of Carrie Von Erich. Great interview. Oh. I would tell everybody to check that out. But we'll be back next week to take you on another awesome trip in the Wrestling Wayback Machine. So for the great Nikita Brezhnikov and for our wonderful guest, Melodie Perras, this is Benny Scala, the one and only player. I am also the poet laureate of the Monte The Pharaoh channel, and I'm going to leave you with this. Join us next week when we go back in time to an era that was oh so sublime, when we held wrestling so close to our heart, knowing that we would never part. Night, folks.
Das verdammt, Tomasz.
Good night.